Okay, it's 10:10. We will call the Sawyer County Administration Committee meeting to order, please. Madam Clerk, may we have roll call?
Tweed Schuman,
Here.
Ron Buckles,
Present.
Dale Schluter, Tom Duffy, Ron Kinsley.
Here.
Okay, let the record indicate we have a quorum. Is anybody online? Mike, no one's online. Okay, please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Certification of compliance with open meetings law, Madam Clerk.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, meeting agenda has been presented. Andy.
Mr. Chair, for item number 16, we'll have council joining us for that. And we have to schedule a time with him where he'll be able to call in.
Sure,
He's planning to call in to the Zoom at 10:40.
that'll work. Thank you. Okay, we'll make note of that. Moving on to number 6, public comments. I have one person that would wish to speak, Miss Linda Zelmer. Please come to a microphone, ma'am. State your name, address.
Linda Silver, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Wisconsin, Edgewater property owner. The agenda that I have here might be numbered differently than yours, but one item is something I spoke to at last county board about the advisory referendum. And I see some of the language that I am concerned with is still there. And I had wished the sponsor was present because I do know the source of the language of that. And I think what we're doing is we're taking outside money, drafted materials to address outside money. And there's a lot of things that other counties are doing to support having fair elections. I think everybody wants that. I just don't think that putting a referendum out there for and incurring additional voting costs is appropriate. And depending on how this comes forward from this committee, I will be sending more information to the county supervisors. I think more importantly, the county should be focusing on these later agenda items like the community code and the county board plans and policy revisions. And just one example is that at the time, it was a change in form of government and Supervisor Kinsley came on as the first new county board chair after many years under Mr. Helwig. The self-organized county ordinance ended up as an insert to the county policies and procedures, and it's really never been corrected. If you look at the language, it's extensive in there, and it's also saying that that ordinance is effective on publication, and it's never been published. And at the time, TJ Duffy, I think, was our corporate counsel. How much he reviewed of that, I don't know, but in all the successive attorney reviews, that's always been missed. And I bring that out now because what's available is an updated draft of Muni Code. And the Muni Code ordinance for self-organized county is not the same as what's in your policy. So my recommendation is that both policy and Muni Code be considered for an additional month or so. It's break down things and let the public have input for things like this. Because as an ordinance, it should be an ordinance and it should be in the code of ordinances, should not be part of policy. And I know I'm exceeding my 3 minutes, but there are a number of other things in Muni Code and policy that I would comment to otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mike, anybody join us late there? Okay, thank you. All right. Moving on then to number 7. Approval of our meeting minutes. August 11, 2022, Mr. Kinsley. Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Duffy to approve our meeting minutes of August 11, 2022 as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That's kudos to you, Madam Clerk. Very well done. Okay, number 8. Advisory referendum prohibiting outside funding for elections. Discussion and possible action. This was at the county board in August, Andy, so I'll kick it to you. What would you like here?
I just wanted to explain, so I've had a couple questions, phone calls from board members regarding this. So this was a resolution was submitted by a board member with a sponsor. With the request for it to go to the board. It did not go through a committee, so according to your board policies, requires a 2/3 vote of the board to bring it on the floor to consider it. So that happened at the August meeting. There was, the 2/3 vote was not achieved. So the resolution was not considered at the board meeting. Per your board policies, so anytime a resolution is submitted by a board member that has not gone through committee, it's the chair's directed them to send it to a committee for consideration. And so that's, just because it didn't get on the floor at the board meeting, doesn't mean it was voted down, it just means that you didn't take any action on it. So it's the chair's job to send these resolutions to a committee. I suggested to him the admin committee. And so now it's here for you to consider.
Okay,
For it to go back to the board, you'd have to vote to approve it to go back to. the
and
board.
move it to the full county board.
Yes.
So pleasure of the board. I guess, Mr. Duffy,
I don't know. how much
are you one of the sponsors here, sir?
it was, but I don't have a lot of facts.
Okay.
You're one of the sponsors also. What do you know about it?
I want to know what Lynn thinks about it because I didn't read it the way I just heard it.
Other than some of the language regarding clerk activities, I think it would be anytime you accept grant funds for just about anything, they come with conditions. And third parties don't always have the same conditions that we want to abide by. I say state and federal grants are great for elections. I'm not so confident about third party.
This
Because,
doesn't really concern us, does it? Lynn?
oh, sure, it
It
could.
does,
It sure could.
not the way I'm reading.
Mr. Chair. just one-
Oh, I'm sorry, Andy.
One other
Yes.
thing I would mention. So the reason I went to the county board and tried to get on the agenda or consideration was the timeline. In order for there to be a referendum.
Oh,
So if you, even if you were to pass this today and send it back to the board for approval. The referendum question could not be on the November
Yeah.
ballot because it doesn't. meet the
That's
timeline.
correct.
So
got it.
I can share with you that, Lynn can share with you that we've seen resolutions submitted to us
That's been passed.
from other counties. That have gone this route, some have taken just a position on outside money. But just you didn't, I mean, really to do anything with this, you'd have to amend it to take out the referendum part because you're not gonna be within the timeline to get on the ballot anyway.
For November.
Yeah.
And some have taken some of the language out and just passed it as not taking third party money. Taking all the other stuff out.
Or a motion to postpone indefinitely or whatever. Mr. Schlier, I'm sorry.
According to the timeline,
A referendum will not make it on the November ballot. It could go on to a future election. April, for example, but it will miss November already. Because our ballots have already been submitted.
Within 60 days, you have to have
Mhm.
referendum question approved with more than 6 days prior to the election.
And that's what Mr. John Righeimer, that's what he explained last month too. And that's why he went straight to the board instead of going through a committee because of the time frame. So I think if we can just set on this and he'll be back probably next month and he can explain more if we want to move forward with it or whatever we wish. to.
Sure.
I know this to die because.
Okay.
I think it's an important statement to make.
Okay.
Everybody scares me. Especially when it's regulated.
Would it,
We need to keep this on.
Andy, would it be correct then to postpone or,
You can
Because-
postpone, you can act, you can amend, I mean, all those things are possibilities for the committee to take.
Well, it's sent back here to act on it and discuss it. Let's act on it. It's here.
But it needs some work on it. It needs some
Well,
amendments, adjustments.
we should have.
Would you like a copy of, for a future meeting of some of the other edits from other counties?
Yeah. that'd
Review?
be helpful.
sure.
Could do that.
So we could postpone it for 1 or 2 months,
1 month.
1 month until our October meeting. Entertain a motion, Mr. Duffy,
Yeah, fine.
second by Mr. Kinsley to postpone this advisory referendum for 1 month until our October administration committee meeting. Correct?
Yep.
Good with that?
Can you work with John a little bit to get the word?
Sure.
And maybe
Sure.
Andy also,
Yep.
that's acceptable.
And then Lynn and Andy will work with Mr. Righeimer on this, on an amendment or the language.
Yep.
Okay, motion on the floor to postpone for 1 month. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I,
Motion carries. Now, you noted, Mr. Buckholz, Madam Clerk. Okay, number 9, Veteran Service Department report. Gary is not here, but he sent a report to all of us. One thing that came up in our budget meeting with finance is he does not have an assistant.
Right.
Correct, Lynn? How does he feel about that? Is he requesting one, Andy, or no?
No, and when we met with him with his, we went through his budget, he made the comment that he hasn't had one. Not quite a year, and we didn't know if they wanted one, so that's why. It's on the list of potential things that we're removing from the budget. Now, where we were with it is we have ADRC down there and veteran service. We talked about a shared position between the two. That would, basically be reception and then administrative tasks to support both offices. Paul and Gary are supposed to be talking about what they need in that position to put together a job description. Part of that was, we were also gonna see, once they moved into the building, from a functional standpoint, how that would work.
That's a question I had. Has he made comments how things are working now? Sorry.
No, good. Is it Andy, has he?
Gary,
Yeah,
I mean, Gary's down there by himself right now,
okay,
so I mean, outside of he has to unlock and lock the door and let people in. He has not indicated to Rosemary that he wants he's not requested to fill his administrative position.
yeah, he's had 145 office visits. It's probably right up there, huh?
I guess I'm
Go ahead, yes, sir.
confused. It used to be him and then 2 part-time. Does he have any part-time? Just him?
Just his manager.
Okay.
No administrative.
No, no, and that has been for his request.
And have we had any veterans complaining or anybody hear that? Okay,
Thank you.
all right, we will accept his report. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to number 10. Information technology report. Mike?
Good morning. So I've got my report. Just open up for if there's any questions.
Okay.
If I may, last evening, Mike shared some good information regarding the airport and highway. If you want to share that again,
Oh, sure.
please.
Yeah, we decided a few months back to provide our own internet service through the courthouse, extend the courthouse internet service to highway and airport. And it took a couple of months of tweaking, but we think we got it locked down now. So both highway and airport are getting very good internet service. Derek in fact wrote a letter to Andy and myself saying that it's meeting his needs and he's really happy with it. So I think that was a success.
A good success that
That
the
is a
rest of the
great
board needs to
success.
know how well he's done.
Yeah. Mike, can you expand on you have a fairly large increase in IT for the 23 budget? What is that about?
So a lot of that has to do with security and equipment to either for additional equipment to run applications for the courthouse. And as well as security. So it's some of it's moving to the cloud and some of it's running here on site. So I would say, just to sum it up, most of it has to do with security. Making sure we have, on one hand, good backups in case something happens. And the other side is running security services through third parties that help keep things secure, alerting us if there's any intrusion attempts and things like that.
What about these phishing attacks that Andy and I have experienced?
So unfortunately, those tend to get through. If we were to look at those that are blocked, it's like probably 99% of those things are actually blocked that nobody even sees. The point is that there's so many of them, the 1% that get through tend to cause a little concern. Those phishing attempts, in my view, I think they're more annoying and even comical. I know they kind of scare everybody else, but I think they're silly because they're a time waster. You know, if you respond to them, they'll say, go buy some Apple Play cards and they'll help pay you back later. Well, you know, sometimes people actually do that.
And nobody believed me.
So they're more of a nuisance than anything else, but they're a time waster.
Sure.
The ones that I'm more concerned about is where there's links that people click on, and we're trying to educate folks to not do that at all. Just when it comes to email, just be suspicious about everything that comes across. If you look like you're getting an invoice, people's natural reaction say, oh, I've got to pay my bills, and they click on it, and then they end up giving their IDs and passwords away and things like that. So you just gotta sit back and think, okay, what is this really asking you to do? If it looks the tiniest bit suspicious, don't do it. Give us a call. We'll be happy to help you out with anything that comes across.
Sure. Now, Mike, these iPads, we've had them for years. All right. Is there anything you ever have to do with them or wipe them clean or not really?
So yeah, if somebody resigns or we can recycle them basically. So they've actually been really good models.
Yeah.
We've had to buy a few, but not maybe a couple since we
Mhm.
first issued them. But we'll kind of like our
I would
philosophy
agree.
on equipment is we run them into the ground. So I mean, unless there's a problem
Right.
with them, we'll get you a new one.
Okay. Wonderful. All right, any other questions, concerns for Mike?
You did get my new email address because the election software is not going to be. They require a more secure government email account for clerks in order to enter the WisVote software. So he got that done. And I'm up and running.
They require the clerks to have a wi.gov email, otherwise they can't communicate with the courts.
Oh, gotcha. Dale,
Andy and Joey and I talked to, Mike was part of that, about my candidates, IT stuff for us, and get to some resources. Would that include the Wi-Fi?
I have not heard of any requests from them.
I don't even know if we really needed it.
The only time I talked to them was some conferencing equipment. I just gave a recommendation, but then I haven't heard anything else. So.
They ended up having to send a lot of equipment back because our other stuff was too old for it. It won't be compatible. So they had to downgrade again.
Just Mr. Schitter's talking about, I haven't even gotten into it with departments or did bring up the finance, but with our budget discussion and the budget requests for the next year. In the request, they asked about some in-kind contribution to the senior resource center in the form of support for like IT with their IT issues, and maintenance, minimum, some small maintenance or law and storm removal types of things. So I haven't even addressed that or figured that.
Okay. I apologize for jumping the gun.
Didn't bring it up.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Schleter. Anything else for Mike and IT? Appreciate all you do. Yeah. All right, moving on then, number 11, human resource report.
Good morning.
Ms. Rose?
So Lynn handed out my late report. because
Yep.
it was late. So if you have any questions on that, and the only other thing I will add is I know Paul, Gary, and Patty did meet about that assistant position down at Transitions, and they are in the process of getting that job description.
Oh, down at Oasis? you
Or
mean?
at places.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, good. And I thought the sheriff's department had 4. Or is one a new position? 4 new positions. And we're already down 3 here, yeah.
They had requested 4 new positions in the budget, but we have 4 openings in
Okay,
current jail positions.
oh, gotcha.
So then we need to put 8 people.
Well, we need to fill 4 jail positions that are open and vacant. And then in the budget, they requested 2 additional jail positions, a dispatch position and an investigator position.
So really we're going to be looking for 8 people.
What we had made, what we included, what Mike and I looking through the budget have included is 2 new positions out of the 4 they requested. And my approach would be, here's the money for 2 positions. You prioritize of the 4 you wanted, which 2 are the highest priority.
Good, Mr. Kinsley.
I have a question, but. The sheriff was here last meeting and he explained to us. The female. Jailers, they're gonna be in trouble real soon. Any words of wisdom how to contradict that or?
Well, we have gone round and round. I mean, I'm hesitant to even. We need to look outside the box because we're not being able to attract jailers. It's a very difficult job. It is. You're dealing with people that don't want to be where they're at. It's not a happy, fun work environment. It's a hard job. So I don't know if we have to look at possibly maintaining our jail staff and having more of a technician type position, run central control. That would keep our jailers out on the floor dealing with the inmates, but you know, we might be able to access a different pool of candidates. Should we make that type of change? I have discussed this with various individuals and they're guarded on it because it's nice to have another jailer who's trained in case something goes wrong, and I get that. But we're gonna have to be creative. We just have to be creative.
Yeah, and I kind of,
Money won't do it.
I don't think more money's gonna do it.
and Mr. Duffy, you brought up a great point earlier too. Maybe we need to tax CJCC and Justice Point.
Yeah.
You know, get them on this problem too. You know, why?
I would think with women, most of the women crimes aren't serious.
Well-
And and they are a threat to the public.
Right.
Put them on a bracelet.
Um,
See,
sometimes those are our worst enemies.
Yes.
and what's the type of crime they have?
It's the same crimes that.
Well, usually they're involved in a lot of crime.
it also- It depends on why they're in. I mean, it could be a probation hold, or maybe they're not sentenced yet and not eligible for a bracelet. I mean, there's a bunch of different factors.
But even with probation, there's no reason why these people have to be in jail. They're not a threat to run. Put them on a bracelet. And they take a lot of time for hearing things, you know,
And
but I think you're out of the box. This is what you're gonna do.
Yep.
And they aren't gonna
Agree.
threaten people.
Yep.
Get them out. I don't know.
No, we've definitely discussed the bracelets and like Rose said. Trying to get sometimes the court has to widen, they want the court to widen the criteria that who's eligible for a bracelet.
Sure.
And then
Sure.
it's definitely. And jail administration, the sheriff have their criteria. They're eligible, who can go out, but definitely there's the capacity there to do more. Bracelets.
Yeah, and the sheriff did say he took a real conservative approach with that because he didn't want it to fail, right? And he said that maybe it's time to rethink that or look at that. Plus, we have to be careful now. We're building a second courtroom. And we're housing all these people outside of the county. And there's talk of having them zoom into their court appearance. Well, why did we build a second courtroom? Because we gotta be careful. We're gonna utilize this thing. Go ahead, Ron. Mr. Kinsley, go ahead.
Well, like our administrator said, we're going into labor negotiations, so we're gonna be careful what we do, but. I don't know. I'm looking to try to help you the best I can. Maybe we should be looking at a stipend. If someone puts in 6 months, they're eligible for some kind of stipend. I don't know.
And we discussed that on the union,
Okay.
a new union person, when they're hired at 90%. A full-time union person.
Okay.
6 months, they go to 95, and at a year, they go to 100% of the wage. And we did discuss that. Maybe that is something we can do that would move the jailers up faster through the steps.
You don't even have people applying for the jobs.
No.
It's tough to say that's gonna happen.
That's what I mean, because we don't have, there's no bodies, there's a
Right.
serious lack of bodies that want to work.
And Rose, the wage is comparable, right? To
Our-
other
our-
facilities?
Our longer serving jailers' wages are very comparable. Our starting wage is a little low.
Okay.
Please take care of it the best you can.
I do try,
I
I
know you
really
do.
do try.
I think I see less health and human services positions, right?
Mhm.
You've kind of done some work there.
Mhm.
Congrats.
The ambulance wage did help drive some applicants here, so we were able to do some hiring, but they mostly casual, but we are going full time.
One full time, the rest part time.
So we're still out, marketing that, that position and hopes to attract some more full-time staff, some for vacancies.
Are we, Rose, are we trying to fill this treasurer position?
It's advertised,
Okay,
yes, it's. up
is that
there.
hurting us during this
That's
time of
good.
collection?
I don't have any applications for it yet.
We shifted, Randy, our staff accountant, just from spending more time down at the treasurer's office, learning the operation, but also helping out. Before Rebecca resigned, spent a lot of time, Randy spent a lot of time there learning as much as she could.
Rebecca was very knowledgeable. She's been there a long time.
Mhm.
Thank you for all you do, Rose.
Yeah, absolutely, Rose. Thank you. Anything else for human resources?
Just maybe while Rose is still here, I have it noted in my comments later, but so in addition to doing all this hiring and firing, we have had to deal with some HR issues in a couple departments that have taken up quite a bit of time. So we did have to turn to, there were some cases that had some potential liability for the county. So in that case, our insurance company helped assist us with that. So they assigned counsel to help us investigate and navigate these things. So she's done a lot of time with these issues, and part of it's having the appropriate conduct and good culture around here. So I think we're addressing that. But it has not been without some intense work on Rose's behalf, and some things are still ongoing, but just want to keep you aware of that.
Great.
Is the atmosphere in the courthouse where it should be, is it a pleasant place to work, or is it toxic, or?
I wouldn't use the word toxic. I mean, I think we can always do some improvement there on engagement with the employees and, giving them some value to their job beyond just paycheck they get. I think that's an area that I want to improve upon. We've got some things going. I guess the other thing I was going to mention, I think this goes to that is, I don't know if there's a atmosphere of people not wanting to speak up. It has come up in a couple cases where people don't want to say anything. So one of the things that we're implementing right now, it'll be up and running. You'll get an email probably before the next 30 days as we're starting up a hotline, basically. We're using an outside entity, we pay a fee. There'll be a portal on our website, a telephone number. And so employees that want to report HR issues, ethics issues, fraud issues, will have an outlet to do that in an environment that has some protection for them. So we want people to speak up and speak out. I mean, not just on HR issues, but fraud. Because we have a small organization, like a lot of counties, we don't have the level of checks and balances that you want to have. I mean, I think we have checks and balances. But the number one way fraud is usually caught is by somebody saying something. Not always going to see that on paper. So I just saw that as a gap, and this, I don't. Other counties, I had this. Well, we had fraud in Russ County. That's why we implemented it there. Bayfield County has had this same service for a while. So it's there at least. I don't expect to see a lot of volume used by it. But I mean, it's not just employees, board members, the public will all have access to it. So at least we have an outlet for employees to. And we'll promote that to the employees to say, here's your avenue. If you have a problem that you need to report and you don't feel comfortable going to somebody to talk about, this is available. So that's just another way to engage them and address issues if they are out there.
They've been doing a lot of things for employees. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Rose.
You got someone appointed to run the pizza parties every Friday now? Rebecca's gone.
We had a barbecue, didn't we? We did have. a
Yeah, I hear
barbecue.
about those. That's great.
Good.
And they're not all just retirement parties, right?
No,
Right.
no, this was a meet your neighbor party.
Good. All right. Thank you again, Rose.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. All right, number 12,
Thank you, Rose.
Municode discussion possible action.
So I know this has been hanging out there for a long time.
Yep.
Started under prior administration and prior council. So when I got into place, there's, Lynn and I went over it and there's some questions as to whether everything was included. And so we had council make sure they have reviewed it now. I've had departments review it. And so I want to just make a statement on it, though, that it's not, we did not make any updates or changes to the document since May. Because, I mean, there's been changes to ordinances since then. Those would go in as an update to this document. We did not go in and look, I mean, we tried to make sure what's in there is accurate based on what the board had previously adopted for ordinances. And I think, as you're all aware, they were kind of, zoning had their ordinances, the sheriff had their ordinances, there's stuff in transportation, they're all kind of scattered, which is why we went with Municode to kind of pull it all together. So this is just an effort to pull it all together, have a starting place for the code. And once that's adopted, every time you make an ordinance change, and I think the clerk sends those in to Municode, and then they update the online code and they update periodically, not every time they'll like do it.
So this is a living, breathing document that can be amended and.
Yep.
Okay. And is this incorporated within our policy and procedures or separate?
Maybe that was gonna address that, we got the policies procedures. It some policies are ordinances, but not all ordinances are policy.
Okay,
But that, when we get to the policies, I'll bring that up. I'll bring that
Okay.
back to the ordinance.
wonderful. Pleasure of the board
So I, you want to approve it, I move we approve it.
and move it on for county board.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Buckholz. To approve the Municode. Package, do I call it, what should I call it, Andy? Package, Municode package. For approval and moving on to the full county board next week. To address and approve. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Kinsler,
What page am I on? Page 3.
Okay.
Do you want to update page 3 before we push that on?
Oh. The officials that are listed?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll update that. It's approved by the board.
Good point.
The current board members. And council.
oh, yeah,
That administrator.
good catch. Great, okay, motion to approve and move to the full county board with those edits on page 3, Madam Clerk. Okay, is there any further discussion? Yes, Dale.
Last month, talked about invitations on other comments. Did that get rolled into this? Or is it-
It's not in here, it's in the policies, which we'll get to.
It's in the policies, okay.
Yeah.
It's coming, Dale, yep,
Thank you.
okay. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Lynn will add that to the county board agenda, please. All right, moving on to number 13. Resolution designating an intoxicated driver assessment facility. Discussion possible action. We have a resolution in front of us. Andy, do you want to comment on this?
Sure, I'll just give you the background. This came up in the middle of the Human Services meeting the other night. One of the presentations that this needed to be done. It was not on the agenda for Human Services. It was just brought up that night. What's happened is that our prior, as a county board, we're required to have a intoxicated driver program. And then as part of that program, you have to have a facility that does your assessments. So when somebody has a intoxicated driver, they have to go and get an assessment. Sawyer County, our Human Services Department, it's technically called the Sawyer County Health and Human Services Information and Referral Center, is currently designated as your assessment facility. And they're operating under a 7513 certification. DHS is changing the DHS 75 regulation. So that certification is becoming obsolete. And the Human Services is in the process of securing a 7515 certification. So as part of that, the board needs to recognize the new certification and re-recognize Health and Human Services Information and Referral Center as the designated intoxicated driver assessment facility under the revised DHS 75.
And approving this resolution does that,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Motion by Mr. Buckholz to approve the resolution designating Sawyer County Health and Human Services as the intoxicated driver program assessment facility. Second by Mr. Kinsley. Is there any, and then move this to the full county board, Andy, for approval?
So how is this gonna change what's being done now?
Doesn't.
This makes it legit. Okay.
We're just complying with the new DHS code.
Is there any further discussion on the motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Kinsley? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
It just puts it in place.
Glad we cleaned that up. Yes, okay. Number 14, County Board Policy and Procedure Revisions, Discussion and Possible Action. Andy, let's start with the ethics draft.
So.
Is that where you want to start?
Yep, at the ethics draft, I had looked through a draft of the last month. There were some small changes made, council has reviewed it. And the revised document is included in the, is on the agenda for either more changes or move it forward so we can put it in place as policy.
Okay, and this is part of the policy and procedures.
It is, it's its own policy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
But
it will replace the current ethics language in your
Okay.
board policies.
Can we approve these all one swoop here and move them on?
You can.
Or do you want to do it individually?
I would just do them individually, and maybe I want to
Okay.
make one comment too on the ethics draft.
Yep.
The ethics policy and the board policies, and this was, I think alluded to in public comment, so. I'll start with the board policies. Right now, that's your board policy that the board's adopted. It is not part of your ordinances. In the ordinance under chapter 2, it does refer to Sawyer County as a self-organized county, but you're pretty light there on having anything else listed under ordinances regarding your organization and policies. And some, I'm not gonna say all, because I don't know if it's all, but in many counties, your policies would just be part of the ordinance. So I did talk to Andy Phillips, his counsel, and his recommendation is that you should codify your board policies into an ordinance. Same thing with the ethics policy, will become part of that board policy and be codified in the ordinance.
Okay.
They also, I mean, in your board policies, you also allude to that there's a zoning committee, zoning committee. Bylaws, thank you. Bylaws, and then you have Human Services has their own bylaws. His recommendation is that all that should be codified as part of an ordinance. That way it's all there for the public to see, and the change to update the ordinance is all consistent.
Sure.
So I
And we
just
can
say-
amend that to put those in, right?
Yep, so
Yep.
I think the first thing would be to approve the ethics draft, and then you want to approve the board policies, and approve the county board for approval.
Yep.
So then they'd be set as policies, and then as a second step, the board wants, it would be approve those to be part of. Go to the process of becoming part of the ordinance, is be codified, because you wouldn't just copy these and put them in the ordinance. It would need to be reformatted and change the numbering, so it's consistent with the ordinance.
Sure.
Community code document.
Do we have any pending ethics problems now?
We've got one ethics complaint that's waiting in the wings. But the reason for the ethics policy and brought forward is that you had ethics language in your board policies, and you have some ethics language in our personnel manual. Basically saying what an ethics violation would be, but it had nothing to outline the process to submit a complaint. And once the complaint is submitted, how is it investigated and adjudicated by the ethics board? So that this has everything in there now.
So we have the ethics draft. Okay,
I'll move we approve it.
yes, motion by Mr. Duffy to approve the ethics draft. And move it on to the full county board for consideration, second by Mr. Buckholz. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Dale.
codifying these things, does that give them more teeth? Yeah, okay, great. That's what I want.
It does.
Sure.
Thank you for recognizing me. I would appreciate if the committee and then maybe the full county board become informed about the reason for a codification of your ordinances. It's not just organizing them, it has to do with publication of ordinances. So for instance, all the ordinances that the county has been adopting that have fines associated with them, without having a code of ordinances and you're not publishing them, somebody could challenge that they're not even valid. And so there are a number of reasons to codify them. And I guess after listening to the intent to further codify and put in ordinance form the bylaws, I appreciate that you're moving forward the policy, but I think that's all the more reason to hold off on approving community code at the county board. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion approving the ethics draft language and moving on to the full county board? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, board policies, Andy amended.
Mr. Phillips has joined us.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
we're close. Board policies, Andy, do you wanna?
yeah.
I know we have a lot of red lines in here and a lot of amendments were made, correct?
Yep, so what's in the packet is the red line version, actually with Attorney Phillips's assistance. We took the original document and the document, all the changes.
Yep.
And he was able to produce this document that, really more clearly shows what's been redlined out and what's been added, so. You can see the markup document we had been working with was just too hard to track, and I know there was a request to get a clearer picture
Sure.
of the changes. In the last meeting, one thing I want to point out just quickly is on page 717 of the board packet, number 9. The committee's request, it has in there now, the chair of the committee determines in advance of the meeting, that a quorum of the committee will not be present at any scheduled committee meeting. The chair of the committee may invite a board member who is not a member of the committee to attend the committee meeting and serve as an alternate member of the committee with full membership privileges for that meeting only. In no event shall more than one board member serve as an alternate committee member at any committee meeting. So that's your request. So
Right, that allows us to meet the quorum and have the
Yep.
meeting correct.
I
Yep,
worked with
I like
Attorney
that.
Phillips to his recommended language to make that work.
Okay.
You like it.
Everybody sees that?
Yep.
Number 9, yep.
Then under the public comments language. So was adjusted in the last meeting.
What page is that on, Andy?
It's on page 723 of the packet.
Okay, so how does that read?
Well, it allows, some edits, some language by council. Just clean it up a little bit, points out that a public participation board meetings is a privilege and not a right. The chair and the board have an obligation to maintain appropriate to come to board meetings.
Yeah,
It's
that's
added.
16. This is under Rule 8, right?
Rule 8, sorry.
Public participation in board meetings, 16.
It
On ours.
eliminates that public comment at the beginning is for items not on the agenda or time of consideration. Replaces it. That all public comment is during the public comment portion of the meeting.
Yep, I like that.
The chair is also able to exercise discretion to recognize and allow non-board member comment participation during the meeting pertaining to agenda items. So all public comment.
That's if we have an expert in the field or someone,
The
right?
board is the
Yeah.
chair's discretion.
Okay, good. Both the full county board and the committee level.
Correct.
Good. Okay, that looks good. Everybody okay with that? Mr. Buckholz?
Yeah.
Mr. Schleter? Public comment section.
I think those were the two areas that had some significant changes after.
Yeah.
Discussion last week.
That and replace, if someone resigns or whatever.
Yeah,
Extended the time frame for that.
and without having a special election.
Right.
Right,
Where's that? at?
that's, I saw it, it's ahead of that. I just saw that. Oh, right here. Number 3, page 7 on your,
Page 7.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, extended it to 90 days. and
if a
then-
vacancy occurs on the board.
Yep.
Within 90 days, appoint a
Okay.
person
Good.
confirmed by the board. Person would serve the unexpired portion of the term.
Good job.
Good. What about, did we change anything with virtual attendance, Andy, or is that kind of the same
That's
language?
all the same.
Okay. All right, and again, this can be amended, correct, and
Yep.
as
Yep.
needed, Andy, as we,
Yep, and so your changes have been incorporated and then Attorney Phillips went through it and made sure all changes were appropriate and then did clean up some language just to make, didn't change the intent, just clean up the language for legal purposes.
okay. Pleasure of the board, then, I guess we would make a motion here to approve and move it on to the full county board for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve. Send it
Okay.
on to the full county board.
Motion by Mr. Buckholt, second by Mr. Duffy. To approve the new board policy amended language. That's presented in front of us today and moving on to the full county board for consideration. Next week. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Andy, we got county administrator's report and then we have our closed session.
We'll do the closed session.
We could do that, sure. Okay, so
So
then I would,
On the broadband, and
Oh, I don't really have anything to report, but we'll come back to it.
okay,
I'll make a motion to go into closed session. Pursuant claims against county 19851G, conferring with the legal counsel of the government body who is rendering oral or written advice concealing strategies to adopt by the body to respect to litigations for which is or is likely to become involved related to Pinewood Properties versus Sawyer County.
okay. Motion by Mr. Kinsley. Second by Mr. Buckholz to go into closed session as read into record. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Buckholt.
Yes.
Mr. Schleter,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy.
yes.
Mr. Kinsley.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, we're at 11.
Just wait a minute. in case she comes in.
Yep.
Protect
Yeah,
herself.
she's. Right. Okay, we are out of closed session, Madam Clerk, at 11:07 a.m. We'll go with number 15 then. Mr. Alvarado, County Administrator's Report.
Sure, so a lot of it, I was doing, obviously, kind of wrapping up some of the administrative work with the ethics policy and the board policies and getting meeting conduct. I'm happy we're trying to drawing those to a close. Outside of that, corp council would be, like I think I mentioned either prior meeting or with HR, utilizing county mutual on potential liability issues that we've had to work through. And then some fair number of zoning issues that we end up referring to council to get a little assistance on. Otherwise, I think the council work at the airport, we've kind of got that all taken care of. And we're working on the MOU for child support and that
Yes.
we're scheduling a kind of got the changes all outlined. Right now, they're working on dates to have a joint meeting between our child support and council and DCF, state level and LCO child support to iron out all those details.
Good.
And I think this will kind of reestablish some lines of communication there. So those have been kind of the major issues we've been using council for. So I think that's going well. They're keeping the bills down as well. So happy with that. Courthouse renovation, I've updated the other committees, but this last month, there's been no major delays or timelines. Timeline changes, we're on schedule. Building closed in and some of the space remodeled by January. East parking lot is still on schedule to be emptied out and one layer of blacktop down before winter, so we can get that in use. Mike did a good job with the AV part of our budget, the thing that we're responsible for. Our initial quote was over budget by 20,000, and now I think at least the initial quote, new quote, my new vendor is 20-ish thousand under the budget. I expect we'll see some moving pieces there, maybe some timing issues, but we're in a good spot there. Same with furniture, fixtures and equipment. The initial proposal or went to order was 10,000 over our budget. Now we're pretty much on the budget line. We took out a bunch of the furniture that we were gonna order and we're gonna have it built in-house. We're maintenance is gonna be able to build it in-house for material. And we only count the material costs. It gets us on the budget number.
Wonderful.
And I think we'll get actually better quality desk out of that as well. They wrapped up their work at Oasis, except for one, I don't know, conference table they have to make. So over the next 6 months now, we'll be building items for the expanded part of the courthouse. Contingency fund is still right around 345,000. There's been no major changes to that. So we're sitting well with the courthouse expansion renovation. Just a personnel item, wouldn't always know it's resignations, but department heads, I think everybody's aware now that Nate Dunstan was resigning as head of the ambulance and emergency government. His last day is September 25th. Kind of went over his duties, responsibilities, and we will not have somebody hired by the day he's gone. So I think it's important that we have an interim person. We really need somebody to be in charge until we have a permanent replacement. So it's my intent to appoint John Framo as the interim administrator for those programs. He's a paramedic. He's also a coroner. He knows some more administrative tasks. Nate's recommended him as well. So, yeah, I've talked to John about the duties and he's accepted serving in that role until we have a permanent replacement in place. Talked about the hotline reporting tool already for HR, so I didn't cover that anymore. Opioid, nothing really new on that. The summit that WCA had, I'm not sure if it was wholly beneficial. It did show that most counties though are still in the process of determining how we're going to utilize the opioid settlement dollars. The takeaway is WCA and NACO, the National Association of Counties, have both created their own little resource tools to assist counties in deciding how to spend the money. Invest it to address the opioid problem. I know here we've had our CJCC working on it, and I think they've had a lot of conversations. So trying to give them a little bit of direction. Public health, I think, has done the most work here. Okay. Factual work, assessing the community for what assistance is out there already and what gaps we have that we need to address to assist people who are caught up with opioids or in recovery or what it causes mental health in the jail settings for us. So public health is coming to CJCC in October to present their findings and hopefully develop some recommendations on which direction we go in. The other takeaway from WCA is that I think we want to focus on evidence-based practices. I think there's wishful thinking ideas, and then there's things that have a track record or have some they're defined already. They can point to success rates or proven capabilities. I think that's going to be our best option to focus in those areas when we go to use the opioid funds. And really, in reality, we don't have a ton of opioid dollars. I mean, we're total settlements 430,000 over 16 years. We're roughly going to get 30-ish thousand a year. That's not put somebody in full-time treatment. That's a couple people maybe in a year. So it's not a ton of money. It's not enough to start up and sustain a new program or a new facility. So I think we'll be looking at some smaller things that will assist us here. Nothing really new on ARPA funds. The only thing we are developing an agreement so that we have some fallback with the people that are getting ARPA dollars from the county when it gets to be audit time, that we have the documentation necessary. When the board approved the ARPA funds, there was not a whole lot of contingencies or strings attached, so we're trying to develop those kind of in going backwards and doing that, so that there's some accountability. Getting that taken care of. The Oasis building. A couple things there. One is, like Tim and Mike's work is fairly well completed. We were waiting for furniture to come in before anybody moves in. Gary's down there, but then once we have the furniture, ADHC will be there. We've got building signage coming and putting in the order for the highway sign to be updated. One of the hesitations to order a new highway sign was what's going to happen with the other side of the building where Journeys is right now. I've talked to Journeys, that's working well for them. They'd be interested in staying longer. Their lease only runs through the end of this year. So at this point, the sign's gonna have Journeys on it. I don't know which entity, which committee wants to take up the lease extension, but that's my recommendation, is that we continue on with Journeys on the other side of the building. They're paying their rent. I don't know of any other services, county services that we want to move down there. But just to continue the current arrangement is how I would approach it.
It's probably with Public Works, I would think.
Yeah, and then maybe the finance, what is the revenue we get?
I want to say it's 1,000 a month. Let's double check.
Just went up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do that. Then just a comment maybe for the budget finance committee. So just from administrator's report, the approach to the budget was status quo. Like we was trying to maintain the current level of services and department functions this year. Going through the meetings with, I'd already been doing this, but you know, during the meetings with departments, Mike and I have been looking at the operation and kind of laying the mental groundwork of how we want to work with the departments once we get a budget adopted in order to make changes going into the next year's budget process. You know, we already know some things about human services where we're trying to shift away from people being in our mental health program on CSP, getting into CCS and mobile crisis, some of these bigger picture items around those committees you've heard about. Making changes there, staffing levels in certain departments as we move into resignations and retirements, trying to do some things through attrition. So, and I think even once we get past this, our first budget, I see no reason why we can't go into more of a multi-year budget process. So we're not just looking at putting this year's budget together, but we're creating the framework for the following year's budget. A lot of things we actually do know. We know shared revenue is not going to change. We know the projection on sales tax and tax levy and stumpage. So we kind of know year to year, there's not going to be significant changes in revenue. So we can start to forecast that out over multi-years and not just look at how we get through next year, but what's the year after that going to look like, and how do we start tracking changes as we move ahead. But I want to say, I think Tom and Mike Keefe have done a good job of training the departments, because people came in prepared and came in with realistic expectations, and anything that was maybe outside of what they were doing in prior years, we knew was coming, like the sheriff's department or the ambulance. And even like these outside entities that talked about the finance meeting, we try to keep those status quo. I mean, I've got the history on a few of those decisions in the past, and those are things you guys can arm wrestle over. But we tried to be realistic about how I thought the board discussions would go and get us to an agreeable budget quicker. But I'd say like the Senior Resource Center is a good example. They came in with more than double the request, and they have their reasons for why, their meal program, the aging meals, food costs are up and personnel costs are up. So I would expect that they are going to need more assistance. That's the same for all businesses. Then that big of an increase, though, then you start asking questions. We'll have to ask questions on the value of that. They're contracted by us to perform that service. So whose job is it then to say, okay, we need it? And I know I'm not saying we're going to do these things, but this is the discussion you start having is, okay, is there a different way to prepare the meals? Is there other vendors? Do you want to reduce the number of meal sites or preparation sites? And is it our job to determine that, or is it their job to start making those changes? We have to start working with them to get to those solutions. That's why Mike mentioned in finance, maybe we allocate money for 6 months and work with them to make those changes. And then, 'cause, I mean, their meal costs are up to $15 a meal. That's a lot for them.
What do they charge?
So
They can't
it's
charge.
all
Can't charge.
contributions. And contributions are the
How many people use that service?
I don't know that, I don't have a meal, people count, I don't think, but there's 30,000 meals annually.
It keeps going up.
Yeah, it's going up.
It's going fast.
And that's why you can't eliminate any meal sites. These people that they need that, so that would even be out of.
And I would tell you that's a,
You know, I understand that's your thought.
yeah, well, I think, oh, you throw all those things out there to see what
Yeah.
they do. It's a volatile conversation, I know that already, because it's, honestly, it's an unfunded, it's not a mandated service, we don't have to do the meal program. If we were a meal program though, I'm gonna be sick then, because I know that's a really important service that people expect to rely on.
Right.
So you can't just, you don't want to pull back on it, because that is something I think that's important.
You said it's not mandated.
Yeah.
I don't believe it is.
Sawyer County doesn't have to do this. And those who started the government told me.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I thought we had to do it.
I better double check that.
Please, because somewhere along the line, we've been told that. I don't believe that is.
Irregardless, we have to work with them to make something happen.
Yeah, I think we want to.
Well, even now, we've
Yeah.
already seen that if they make a change in the delivery of service, even the public doesn't know that, are they complaining to them or they're gonna complain to us? At the end of the day, they're gonna come to us and have those concerns.
Andy, have-
Phones will ring off the wall.
Yep, well, that's what I wanna work with them to.
Yeah.
See if we can maintain the level of service and reduce the cost.
And have you heard from all the libraries now? So we have that all lined up before we get in there.
Well, we know we've heard from
That's
all
usually a
the,
big fight all the time.
yeah, we've heard from all the in-county libraries.
Okay.
And then the other ones we don't reach out to, they send us their usage by Sawyer County residents.
Sure.
So we recorded in the budget the ones we've heard.
How about broadband now?
I really haven't done much in broadband the last month, but outside of talking a little bit with the tribe, just working out some details, and then the PSC about the
Is
map.
any work being done now on broadband or is this?
Right now, the biggest thing is there's so much money that's been approved at the PSC and by counties. I mean, we got a lot of money going out for ARPA. There's so much work happening, we're not gonna see some of those projects actually start next year or the year after.
At the same time, they're laying cable all the time now.
Then I don't know if I mentioned this last month, the one thing that's a head scratcher that people are wondering what's gonna happen is, it looks like LTD, the company that got a lot of the RDOF monies in rural Wisconsin, has been denied access to those funds. So that's all, that's the company that's working directly with the town of Fraser.
Yep. So what's Strafer gonna do?
So most likely, the guess is that those RDOF, at least the federal dollars, will be put back up for auction and other companies will have a chance to use. That's not just the town of Dearborn, but there were other areas in Sawyer County that they were awarded federal dollars to put broadband.
But you're working on a map, so they'll be able to.
That's
see.
the one thing that is happening is, as part of our, well, as part of the PSC dollars to those companies, they're supposed to provide their shape files to the state. And we'll also be getting them here to put into our own mapping system, so we can start to see where the gaps are in broadband services in the county.
Is this, they're being denied federal funds, is this routine thing that pops up because somebody didn't sign something? Or is
No.
This is strategy like that?
It appears, based on what I've seen, that they're being denied funds because there's not a belief that they can execute what they said they can execute. And it was in the span of a couple of weeks. And they also got RDOF dollars in Minnesota and had applied for Minnesota money. Minnesota actually put out an RFP for somebody to come in and assess the capabilities of LTD to do the work. Then like the next week, the FCC, who controls the federal money, said that LTD was not going to be given access to the dollars they had.
Andy, are there any dam projects coming up that we have to consider? And do we have a
Yeah, we did.
fund balance for that or?
We spent our fund, or not all of it, but the resource development fund that we have
Yeah.
replenished. We drew back down for the overage in the what's the dam that we're
Oh.
Town of Draper.
Upper Brunette.
Yes, that's what grenade in that dam. So that's down. We didn't give it out today, but in the capital improvement plan, we do have, they have more dam assessments coming up and then anticipated dam repairs that are not next year. But there's a dam assessment next year. Then we're gonna be doing a dam rehab project probably every other year for the next 5-6 years.
Yeah, we haven't done any for many moons, and
Right.
that's why.
There was a meeting last week that Jay had me come to. It's not our dam. We're working really hard to make sure it's not our dam. But the Callahan Lake Dam is essentially an unowned dam. That now the DNR has known about it and know that nobody has taken a claim to it. But it's in need of rehab, so they're trying to determine ownership or pull together a consortium or the township with county, the lake,
What township's that in?
so.
Round Lake.
I think it's a DNR's dam.
We all hope so. I mean, I went out, took a look at it, the town road. If the town road wasn't there, there would be no water in that lake. I think it's the town's dam. Town road goes right over the top of the culverts that control the outflow of water.
We got one of them in our township, but we don't.
They've researched the property records back into the 30s and was transferred back and forth. The county owned it at one time. And it looked like it was because of the possibility of getting federal funds for it. That never happened, so the county transferred it back to the property owner. And they basically have said there's no ability to name an owner of record.
Okay. And Andy, are you pretty confident in this budget presentation and progress we're making? And with our new finance person, are you?
Honestly, I'm 80% comfortable.
Okay.
We want to go back and double check some things and just make sure. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the department budgets, with putting all the pieces together and then looking at the new world. It's been a learning process to use the new world software for both of us. And some departments put their own information in, some we put in. So I want to double check things. But
Sure.
we're fortunate that there was some good budgeting in the last few years. That we've had this increase in sales tax.
Yes.
Stumpage is held. And the county's moved to doing the short-term borrowing for capital improvements, all created some wiggle room that I don't think you had 5 years.
Need to check on that date when it's gotta be published between
Yeah,
Lynn,
check on
Mike and
that.
you.
I agree. Yeah.
It's gonna go back to the dams though and put this out there. So we don't have a way. Some of these dams, they're falling on the county because the county owns them. You know, your alternative to not rehabbing the dams in the DNR, we call it the disrepair, is you could pull the dams. So that would obviously affect people that live around the lake and access to that. So there are some counties that have taken a harder position on this, that it's not totally their expense. And you can't force owners to create a lake district. That is one alternative that the property owners around the lake can form a lake district, which allows them the ability to levy onto the lakefront owners to generate funds. And it's not just for dams, but they could do lake improvements, habitat development, or just to maintain the dam is an overall expense as well. So that's one alternative down the road if the county wanted to defer some of the costs, would be to encourage the formation of lake districts to assist in that. It's a hard thing to do, but it is possible. That's what they're talking about in Callahan Lake is that. Apparently, they actually was gonna look, they're trying to create one. The township or the county have to approve the formation of the lake district. At that time, for whatever reason, the town around it denied it. That is a way for the property owners on the body of water to be assessed for some money to take care of.
When you say assessments, do we have dams that no longer have the same needs that were there when they were first built? 50, 60 years ago?
I don't know the answer to that. I think all of our dams are on bodies of water that have people living in them. We might have, maybe we have a dam or two that are in the county forest. The only ones I've talked to Jay about are ones that. You know.
Okay, well, it sounds like Andy, you gotta keep your eye on and your finger on that jail situation.
Yeah.
And like you said too, any alternatives? And, you know, the use of our new courtroom now and sounds like the transporting of people to other jails is gonna cost. Take up deputy time and,
Well, that's, you didn't get, I mean, we've gone into detail with the sheriff on that because. I mean, we're fully staffed as patrol right now for the most part, but we don't necessarily have extra time for people to do transport, so.
right,
Not just for our own jail transports, plus secure transports for human services when they need to take a client. We are spending some money through on a third party to come in and do those for us, like the sheriff. The company's called Talent. They might hire them to do a transport. They need to sit, they say, sit on somebody at the hospital or to monitor, or to make sure that they're secure in the hospital. They'll pay Talent for them to do that on a contract basis. So we'll open up the discussion with the sheriff instead of. I know this, we tried before and they've lost the staff to do it, but they'll have a reserve of transport. Deputies, a retired officer, retired being on, we can pay an hourly wage to do the transports for us. But, we talked to the sheriff honestly daily right now. Probably just need to. I think we've got him working on a lot of things back and forth. We're just gonna settle on a few and move ahead with them and see if they work.
And now you need another jail, advertise for a jail administrator.
That posting out this week.
do you think that's a negotiation team will have a pre-meeting before the negotiations?
Yeah.
So we have something in mind,
Yeah, we don't have a date yet.
right?
I've already went through the contract with the sheriff and the chief deputy and asked them to take a closer look at it and find out, because we think it's gonna be, this is a new negotiation, we wanna make sure we have anything in the contract that we want to address.
Right,
Usually we do that an hour before the first one.
yeah, I just want to be ready because we got a new negotiator, right?
Yep. They've already pulled together all the numbers for us as to what the other contracts are settling out.
Okay.
We have that.
All right. Thank you. Is that any other questions for Andy?
I just started the resolution on that end for you to sign. for the capitated record.
All right, future agenda items. Anybody? We're gonna change this too, Len. These other matters for discussion only get us in trouble. Correspondence reports. Conferences, meetings.
Did anybody see the newspaper, Sawyer County Record? Front page,
Yeah,
Yeah, what?
Mr. Morozek brought it to my attention last.
oh, yeah.
I haven't read it. I don't get it till this afternoon.
You gotta read it. There's a lot of misprint in there. Okay, is this, now this group, it'd be, how many of you are gonna go to that WCA conference?
Just you three so
Okay.
far.
That looks very good. There's some good breakouts. Things that we would break.
Yep.
All right. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.